we have been seeing interesting levels coming through. Dollar, Swiss franc, the dollar hitting new record levels, euro, Swissy, basically at parity. Are these the kind of levels where we see intervention? Are you expecting anything like that to come to the fore? We know that it has been rhetoric since the beginning of the week.
Good morning, Eleni. Yes, we did see the Swiss central bank coming out and kind of reducing that LIBOR rate this morning. So and coming out quite vociferously and saying they're concerned about the strength of the Swiss franc. Clearly, the Swiss franc has been benefiting from all this market turmoil. It is one of those traditional safe havens, along with the Japanese yen. And I wouldn't be surprised at all to see some kind of intervention. The question is, will the Swiss bank act alone, or will it be some kind of a coordinated intervention from some of those maybe G7 central banks? That's probably the question. But I think the risk of intervention is pretty high at this stage.
Okay, Michael, are we perhaps getting involved too much in the hype at this stage? Do you think that people just need to take a step back and see how things are going to play out? What we were waiting for with bated breath was the 2nd of August, the deadline for the US debt limit to be raised. It was done. Why is there still so much negativity? Does it all emanate from those Italian bond yields, which have been rising extensively, and worries about more bailout packages for the bigger nations in Europe?
Well, Eleni, I think that, if we look at the performance of kind of risky assets during this credit crisis, the Rand case in point, it's actually held up relatively well. But now we're starting to see the pressure really coming through because of global growth concerns. And I think that's at the epicenter of this risk aversion that we've seen. We saw some very disappointing consumer figures out of the States yesterday. That comes on the back of disappointing manufacturing data earlier in the week, and of course last week's poor GDP figures. And I think that's what's really spooking the market. This European debt crisis, of course, is spreading. It's becoming deeper. Italy and Spain now kind of at the forefront of the concerns. But I think it's basically the twin evils. It's the debt crisis, and now, more importantly, this growth outlook. It really doesn't look good. That's what I think is causing people to flee to the safe haven assets.
Okay, well, let's take a look at the local currency, because we are seeing a bit of weakness coming through against the dollar. We keep talking about risk perceptions and perceptions of risks changing extensively. Are we still stuck in a very tight range for the local currency? Because I've heard that still, if we see the Rand heading towards 685, then that is a good level to sell dollars.
I think we are still very much in a broader range of 650 to 7 to the dollar, but I wouldn't agree that we'd probably stop at sort of the mid 85s. I think we could push on to even higher levels if this risk aversion persists, and probably closer towards that 697 Rand handle again. I think, at the moment we're seeing risk aversion coming through aggressively. We have seen foreigners buying our bonds, and that's probably been keeping a bit of a lid on Rand depreciation. But the last few days, I think we've seen a turnaround again in the Rand's fortunes around that 660. And for my money, we're probably going to be heading back up towards that 7
Okay,
Rand
so
handle.
Michael, I sent you on a bit of a hunt this morning. We were talking about the 2031 bond that was on offer yesterday with 800 million Rand. One buyer coming up and buying all that paper at a rate of around 8.68%. It was 3.68 times covered. Give us your view. You did some homework. What did you uncover?
Yeah, it seems as though it was a foreign buyer that took up the issue, and I think this again talks to the point I just made in terms of foreigners are still seeing some value in our bonds. In the current environment, of course, people are taking their money out of risky assets and putting it into cash. And some fund managers, investors out there are saying, well, if I've got to put it in cash, I might as well put it in the South African bond market, which is still offering me a relatively attractive yield. Okay. The problem with that, of course, is the currency. If the currency starts to weaken aggressively, you could make some severe losses, even though the yield differentials are in your favor. So that's always the gamble when it comes to South Africa. And of course, if those portfolios reverse, that's when you tend to see the Rand weakening quite aggressively.
Okay, so Michael, Sasha Narishkin wants to know, if you could own any currency in the world, which would it be?
The moment I'd be owning the dollar, I think it's oversold, and I think it's going to continue to recover over the next sort of 6 months. I think the Swiss franc, the Japanese yen, are very rich at the moment. But over the longer term, the situation changes, because I think over the longer term, the US is faced still with a lot of headwinds, not least of which an inflation problem, as well as reserve diversification. That's probably going to continue to creep into the market. But over the next 6 months, I think the dollar will recover.